DreamWorks' terrible Kung Fu Panda 4, from the quadrilogy that should have stopped after the second one. Undeniably, Kung Fu Panda is one of the best known DreamWorks franchises, and at least financially, you can see why they went back. You had the original hit movie, which was generally just a fun family time, that I wouldn't necessarily put in the Shrek to How to Train Your Dragon tier, personally.
That was pretty rude.
But it's still amongst the very best of DreamWorks' efforts. Then you have the best one in the second movie, with a villain who went way harder than anyone could have ever predicted. Third one, well, you got Bryan Cranston in there as Poe's dad, but generally, it's just not as good. And then, they just kinda left it there for 8 years. And who could blame them? Jack Black was still at the peak of his unwavering likability. Nothing was gonna change that in the subsequent 6 months. They even had a Tenacious D version of a Britney Spears song in the soundtrack ahead of their big world tour that went on to fulfill all of its dates without any issues. Coming off of his turn as Bowser in the Super Mario movie, perhaps it was time to revisit the character that really made him a reliable name in voice acting. The C-list saber-toothed tiger character in Ice Age doesn't count. Plus, with DreamWorks having just dipped back into Shrek with Puss in Boots: The Last Wish, maybe it was time to visit another 2000s property. But how did it go? Well, it's not exactly the best ending. Let's get into it. We begin with the "Look at all our characters" logo again, which is a particular shame with Kung Fu Panda, as the little oriental-themed animations they had in the first 3 movies would, actually get you into the movie's world immediately. But oh well, it's a minor thing. We then head to quite an intense bit of goat mining going on, with a very cliche gag to boot. Before all is disrupted by the return of Tai Lung.
That's right. It is I, Tai Lung.
A return he pronounces in the most Saturday morning cartoon manner possible.
And no one will stand in his way. Not even the great Dragon Warrior.
Conceptually, that's both terrible and cool. To turn around in the 4th movie and say, yeah, let's bring back the original good villain, that's very Star Wars, Palpatine somehow returned. But on the other side of things, hey, you can finish a story arc from the first movie and make a nice, beautiful tying bow. I wonder if they'll achieve that along the way. Meanwhile, Bryan Cranston's dad's now seemingly settled in with adopted dad. To be fair, as far as swollen ensemble casts go, this is nowhere near as bad as, say, Ice Age 5 and its core cast of 12 characters. And the 2 dads are up to a bit of one-note back and forth.
I'm sure Poe is fine.
What if he's hungry?
Somehow, they managed to kill almost a minute on this one bit of talking about whether Poe's fine, returning to the franchise just to waste our time. However, following,
He's probably just kicking back and catching some rays.
we get a pretty funny pun payoff and some solid action scenes between Poe and a literal stingray. Nice. And when we're talking about the animation, it's great modern stuff. The action is consistently well animated throughout this movie, and is one of those things that very rarely actually becomes a real criticism in this terrible series, because animators, what do you know, they're pretty damn talented. And they make sure to showcase it right from the literal kickoff. Seeing that progression of Poe being legitimately great at what he does now as well is just pretty satisfying. Even when he managed to defeat Tai Lung in the first movie, he still had his own special way of doing it, which was a great message in that first one. But to see the development of the subsequent 2 movies encapsulated in this opening scene, you can see that he is now at his prime as the Dragon Warrior. And following that awesome scene, we get the Metro Man joke from Megamind.
We love you, Dragon Warrior!
Oh, and I love you too, adoring fan.
How many movies have stolen that at this point? Was Megamind even the original? At least that was also DreamWorks. I don't even know anymore. It's fine when it's referencing it, in not official media, but when it's just another movie that does it, that's plagiarizing yourself. Or at the very least, recycling. And this short into the movie, having that and a minute of the 2 dads doing "I hope Poe's okay" shtick isn't really installing a lot of confidence in me so far. We then learn that Poe's pulling a bit of a Ryan Reynolds with his investments as the Dragon Warrior, launching the Dragon Warrior Noodle Bar, in which they use Poe's commercialization of him and the Furious 5 to quickly explain the absence of the Furious 5 in this movie. Oh yeah, by the way, they're absent, kinda one of the core tenements of the Kung Fu Panda IP, is it not? It's interesting though, whereas we've had Ice Age and Shrek balloon their cast with each installment as one thing, you've got Kung Fu Panda here making some Department of Ensemble Efficiency character reductions going on. And ironically, from writing that joke to recording it, that tongue-in-cheek reference is already irrelevant. I love the modern world. And with this decision, like, I get it. You know, maybe they looked at those other examples in how larger casts have held franchises back from other stories, but the result of it often feels like the latter end of a sitcom run, where most of the OG cast have left. In fact, one of the few cast members still about is the dad from the third movie. And like, that's the thing. It's not characters padded on from sequels that they've gotten rid of here. It's the characters from the original movie stripped away.
Just because they're not here in person doesn't mean they're not here as life-sized cutouts.
But what's weirdly quite effective is Dustin Hoffman's legitimately aged voice. It's not like Marge in The Simpsons or anything, where she's meant to be the same age as 30 years ago, but clearly doesn't sound like it. Here, it actually kind of works in showing that time has passed, which is kind of needed for the plotline they're going for here.
Successor for what?
A successor to be the next Dragon Warrior.
Ah, boy, we're doing this story, are we? Feels like a lot of franchises are doing this plotline. Whether it's superhero movies and shows or other animated movies, we're just kind of doing this a lot, you know? It's something you can easily add to the lore of this world, but we're just doing a Kung Fu Panda version of Cars 3, aren't we? Right down to knowing that the successor is going to be a new character that we saw on the poster as soon as it's mentioned. Great. I know how this movie ends from the first 10 minutes in a single poster. And we don't even get to see Po in a horrific car crash. That's what this movie's missing. Here we just have Po having an effortless fight with a stingray, clearly at the top of his game, only to suddenly have the successor bomb dropped on him. I'm not sure if I necessarily wanted to see a withering Po per se, but at least show some cracks in his abilities would have, you know, set this up better. Whilst also, surely the existence of Shifu being there doesn't make a lot of sense, as surely they would be the first one looking for a successor as the oldest current, you know, member. The tortoise is already gone. It's time for the koala, whatever the hell that thing is, and then you can worry about Po, and also probably the Furious 5, but you know, that's its own separate thing.
All I know are two things: kicking butt and taking names.
Huh, I guess that's kind of rich to say when he spent the whole first movie not ready to be the Dragon Warrior. And they're doing a similar thing here with the Peace Finder role. By all accounts, it is a different angle on the successor storyline, you know, having a character who's still fully capable and doesn't feel ready to pass on the mantle. But doesn't fill me with excitement that we have to now endure yet another movie where the main character learns to be a mentor for a younger character to ultimately replace them. For the time being though, Po has some other ideas. As a bunch of new guys duke it out for the position, Po ultimately picks himself.
The Dragon Warrior! It's me!
Interesting. He's supposedly meant to be a wise peacemaker right after this, but he's just kind of being a dick here. For the story, I could see the merits of him finding that in the movie. But within the logic of this movie, this guy is not a wise old sensei. It just feels like the character still reads as too young to go onto the retiring old soldier character arc. Cue yet another Vine-adjacent goat gag. I mean, I know the movie's 1 year old, but that doesn't make this joke not 8 years stale. But you know what? This next bit of Po trying to meditate, yeah, I guess it's pretty funny.
Inner peace. Dinner, please. Dinner with peas. In a sesame soy glaze.
That's a very Kung Fu Panda joke, you know what I mean? That could have come out of the original movie as far as I'm concerned. I'm not guffawing at it, but I could appreciate that that does keep the core essence of the franchise going. God, the bar is low sometimes in these videos. But anyway, all peace changes when the character who will be the Dragon Warrior by the end of the movie, let's not kid ourselves, turns up. She's a thief too, so she can have the whole unlikely hero thing going on. And voiced by Awkwafina, because half of all animation is at this point. As you can imagine, it's an Awkwafina impression by Awkwafina. I'm not gonna dog too directly on just a random celebrity I don't know. I'm sure they get plenty of hate already. The internet does have a bit of a stickler for her. But it is worth mentioning, this is not a voice acting performance, this is an actor doing a voice performance. It's unique. It's maybe built for the character. It is boring when we've seen it this many times. They were in mainline Disney, they were in mainline Illumination, they're in mainline DreamWorks. But this is also very much a problem with the casting director rather than the cast. Does that make sense? Even still, pulls me out of the movie like everybody else. And I think there's something emblematic to hear about a franchise that started with kind of celebrity voice acting performances like Jack Black or Jackie Chan in there, but they're putting on voices, but are embellishing the characters that they're warping into. Whereas this, some late stage fourth movie stuff, is just a celebrity puppeteering a character. There's an interesting discussion to have there. It's a criticism. I won't take it out directly on Awkwafina as a person, but I will roll my eyes a little bit. However, despite looking like she's immediately better than Po, I'm glad that he ultimately does get to step up. We know how things are gonna go here, but let's not make it easy and gift her the movie's resolution immediately, you know? There's more that can be said on this character as well, like the actual character design is not very Kung Fu Panda coded. This looks like a Zootropolis character that walked into the wrong studio, and there's something to be said about how it is a Disney-fied Fox design. I remember back when the trailers of this movie were first coming out, someone redesigned them in the DreamWorks style, the Kung Fu Panda style, and it seemed a lot more thematic. There's something going on with this movie that's like kind of Shrek 5'd up, actually. This is a precursor to the Shrek 5 rebrand, where they've taken a lot of the source material out of the source material, and it's just sort of warped over time. It's as if they've kind of recycled the movie so many times that it's no longer the same core tenements of the original movie. That's just a big ramble, but I hope that makes a lot of sense. Either way, a lot of complaints with this new character. Now let's see how they bake into the rest of the movie.
How did someone like you become the Dragon Warrior?
A weird direction for this mentor story. Also, remember the goats from the start of the movie? Yeah, they finally arrive. Man, they've been walking to him all of this time. Followed by one particularly clunky bit of dialogue.
Looks like I'm not the only one around here with a mystery to solve.
And after that character exit, Poe has a solid 20 seconds of mountain wandering before he immediately goes back to her. And here's something a tad disappointing. They just have her tell us who the villain is right here.
The Empress of Disguise, capable of taking any form.
Come on! Whilst we already knew the villain from the trailers, because trailers love to ruin everything these days, this is such a flat way to introduce the villain. And yes, there is something pretty major that they don't give away, but there could have been a twist made out of the villain reveal itself, you know, rather than just saying, yeah, that wasn't Tai Lung. Oh, I don't care about the cool visuals with the exposition dump. It's still an exposition dump. You have this really cool villain idea of a chameleon who can morph into any of the prior villains, right? Who's currently masquerading as the return of Tai Lung, right? Wouldn't it have been far more compelling for Poe to have a rematch with Tai Lung, only for him to suddenly transform into someone completely different? Like, that's how you introduce a villain, and it seems so obvious for a chameleon character. But no, we just need to be told everything about her before we've even properly met this character. This is just the simplest missed opportunity in this movie. It's not even the biggest one. Wasted storytelling potential. This is not the same as the first or the second movie.
Only the most powerful shape-shifting sorceress.
But it gets the Fox involved directly, but there was just other ways to do it than just completely giving away the villain. But with stakes now in mind, Shifu then steps in, still on the train that Poe needs to find a successor. Never mind someone's masquerading as Tai Lung, no big deal.
I know the change is difficult and that you enjoy being the Dragon Warrior.
Like, I get his role here is getting Poe to the next step, but why does he seem to have no cognizance of the threat level going on here? Does he even know that Tai Lung is potentially back in the picture? Someone who's very particularly relevant to him out of all the villains before? And if not, why hasn't Poe told him? In the first movie, just one mention of Tai Lung shook Shifu for that whole movie. Understandable when we're talking about his adopted son figure that turned evil, so why does he have no awareness of that here? Also, here's a line where you think they were writing the two dads out of the rest of the movie.
Tell my dads I love him.
But no, they've got a whole subplot to play out, where Ping's overly worried about him to a more extreme extent than he's ever been up to this point. Again, it's like they've morphed him over time to just be a caricature of himself. It feels very much like they're working hard to keep them relevant to the movie. Good to prioritize him over, I don't know, Tigress. It's not even specific to this mission. Ping was worried about Poe's antics from the opening scene, which will no doubt be diffused by Poe retiring at the end of the movie, right? Unless that's not what happens. For most of their dialogue, we just have more of Ping panicking about Poe being alright, followed by Cranston Panda saying a variation of don't worry. It's very much the insert conversation you give to stay-at-home characters, just so that they've been acknowledged while the main character's gone on their journey. More minutes gone. Also, I know we had the opening of the noodle bar, but I'm pretty sure we haven't had a single conversation between Poe and either of his dads in this movie. Considering we're gonna keep swaying back and forth, maybe we'd be buying into more of the dad's arc if we first had more interaction between them and Poe. One of whom had a whole third movie about him, you know? Also, in this particular scene, the whole restaurant knows about what Poe is doing, kinda giving me even less space for Shifu's take on the situation. There's a threat going on here, and after the whole ordeal training Poe, you want to install a new Dragon Warrior at this point, whilst the Furious 5 is also away not being cast in this movie. Like, the logic gaps in this movie. They're chasms. We then go to a villain scene in which the second line makes sure to shove in exactly who they are.
We're the heads of Juniper City's most prominent crime families.
In fact, that's very much the approach to all of their lines.
We used to run the city. Now we pay her half the money we swindle.
Very handy to know. Thanks for filling us out. You're perfect on the script reading.
I'm the chameleon.
However, her being one of the people at the table, whilst obvious in hindsight, is a solid introduction for her character. Better than the info dump in the prison, anyway. And she's pretty threatening in this scene. She even manages to make an elephant look threatening, so fair play, I guess. Considering they've just told us she's got the crime gangs paying her, it's good that they wasted no time showing why she's so intimidating. And yeah, once again, the animation throughout is amongst DreamWorks' best. Whether it's just a blossom on a tree or these incredible mountain ranges, it is absolutely stunning. Anyway, enough of that. It's time for more of the dads, who are now poised to go after Poe because they are so worried.
The truth is, I'm kind of freaking out.
I guess that's what happens when half of the cast don't come back. There's always a chance the other half are gonna disappear at this rate, so you gotta find a subplot for whoever the hell is left.
Our baby!
What the hell was that shot? It's just weird that it's only now, when Poe's at the peak of his powers, that they're going on the whole overprotective dad arc. It's like 4 movies too late, guys. Oh well, off they go.
Let's go find our son.
You know, I think they're just trying to justify Bryan Cranston's fee at this point. They also just kind of have these conversations speculating about whether Poe's outmatched by the chameleon or not. Meanwhile, Poe and, what's her name again? Zen, thanks Wikipedia. They arrive at a bar where a staff team of bunnies are abused by their patrons. It's kind of dark.
The Happy Bunny Tavern. Well, that sounds inviting.
Hey there, you made it to the halfway mark of this video. You know what to do. Come subscribe if you want to see more terrible animated movies. We're covering DreamWorks this week as the How to Train Your Dragon live action is upon us. And hey, maybe I've got something planned for the Elio release soon too. Anyway, now that I've dated the video, back to the second half of it.
The Happy Bunny Tavern. Well, that sounds inviting.
But I will say one win I will give them on the creative front here is to the captain. First, the pelican speaking with his throat instead of his mouth. Nice. It just weirdly seems to make sense. But then, oh wait, it's the fish in his mouth that's the captain. Did not see that coming. That's actually a pretty great concept. And the bar fight is also a lot of fun. Creatively choreographed and manages to walk that tightrope of Poe being himself whilst also just being effortlessly good at fighting. Also, one of the better trope callouts I've heard.
Who designed the tavern on a cliff?
Anyway, we've had much too decent a portion of movie from this scene, so let's head back to the pointless 2-dad plotline. They have a quick gag.
How was that for acting brave?
Before we head right back to a flashback to Zen and her Aladdin origin story. Kind of feels like a by the numbers insert, as does a lot of this movie, but as a flashback origin, it's fine but brief, meaning I just didn't connect with it whatsoever. It's just the same orphan thief origin we've seen a million times, and I guess technically the original celebrity voice actor role. Is there a meta-narrative here about celebrity castings going on in this movie? I'm feeling it. Anyway, we haven't checked in on the villain in a while, so how's she doing? Pulling an Isengard and using the mines for her own means. Is it just me, or is this a lot of movie without any direct interaction between the villain and the main cast? Like, up to now, Poe's only heard about her and had all potential of a dramatic reveal that it wasn't Tai Lung removed, right? Again, just one scene earlier on where she pretends to be Tai Lung, outmaneuvers Poe, reveals her true self for a big twist, and then both leaves at the start would have both set up the dramatic potential for the villain, set up a direct conflict between the two of them, and put Poe on an arc where he's more evidently falling behind. Maybe even kidnap or seriously wounding Shifu would have done something, you know? Let us know that she means business. Right now, she's just doing bad stuff, but the only connection Poe has to the situation is something a group of goats told him. I don't know, man.
At last, my destiny approaches.
So Chameleon's big plan is to expand beyond Juniper City and rule over every town and village. Classic villain stuff. We even get more artistic graphics to cover the fact that we're having another exposition dump of our evil plan, which turns out to be Poe's vision. So now he has all that downloaded into him as well. It's a decent get around of just having the villain say it all to the tied up hero, saying, well, I'm gonna kill you anyway, as a loose excuse. However, once again, it's just another example of the conflict building without having the hero and the villain have anything to do with each other. Anyway, to Juniper City.
This is the place where you can be whatever you want to be.
So it's the Kung Fu Panda version of Zootropolis.
Whoa! Oh.
Sorry.
but with more corruption. Though I guess there's a lot of that in Zootropolis as well. Just without the lizards actively straight up taking people's money. They do have balls as the police in this one as well, though.
Hey, Fox, we've been looking for you.
Let it go.
Learning Zen's a wanted criminal, they briefly get arrested before a classic comedy chase through the streets scene occurs. Nothing new, but fun enough to watch. The dragon kite part is a particular standout, as is the bulls carefully navigating around a literal china shop. Honestly, I think the action scenes are some of the very best from DreamWorks, and it clearly works as immaculately as it always does, even in this fourth terrible movie. It's just the narrative writing stringing it all together. But when it's actual action, yeah, it's a real feast for the eyes. And there's lots of great gags along the way. Maybe action's just easier to do these days. Yeah, I guess that's apparently the case. On to the criminal underworld, where some bunny children nibble on Poe's nipples. Which is our cue to meet Ki Hui Kwan as a pangolin mob boss.
And when you did, sure to give you a proper homecoming.
And of course, this is the ideal moment for Shifu to show up in Poe's head to say,
There are other ways to bring peace than by kicking butt.
I mean, hey, they got him into the midpoint of this movie in some capacity, I guess. We then have an interesting gag on misinformation, which I would have once said was pretty far-fetched.
So what you're saying is, if we don't hurt Jen a little now,
We can hurt her a lot later.
That kind of resolves things enough for the pangolin guy to help, and then we're back to the dads.
Yeah, this place doesn't look very friendly.
Continuing to be more of a liability than any form of help.
You know him?
Why, I'm his dad.
It was at this moment that he knew. He f***ed up.
Like, I don't really know what their plan is once they get there. Though I do quite like Bryan Cranston stepping up here.
Everything he learned from me.
I'm glad they gave these two at least a little bit of initiative in this movie. It's the best scene we've had so far from the "we're worried about Poe" subplot so far. Meanwhile, there's some cute enough bonding with Poe and Jen, albeit predictably further setting her up to be the next Dragon Warrior. And as overtrodden the born-again trope is, I like the subtext to Jen's line about Poe not being like other masters she's met. As well as a testament to Poe's character, the implication it leaves is that Jen lives her life like she does, as that's all she really knows, including other mentor figures that she's encountered. Very much about to become apparent. Anyway, as they approach the chameleon's lair, the dads arrive at Juniper City. I know they're worried about him, but did this movie really need a "my son's gone missing" subplot too, as if he's been kidnapped? He's the Dragon Warrior, guys, not Gary the Snail. Like, that's the thing as well. After all of his adventures, in a movie where he's now been the Dragon Warrior supposedly long enough that it's time to hand it over, now was the movie for the parental figures to suddenly get worried? It just doesn't make sense. And it's crazy that this was the plotline that got through after everyone else has been scrapped, essentially. Whatever, I just need to accept it's very much part of the movie and get on with my life. Normalizing two dads in itself is really cool. I just don't have time for their contrived plotline. Time for a mandatory gag, but hey, at least it's faintly creative. It's not exactly my type of humor, but I also can't be mad at this one. I love the way that everyone jolts up to be awake. From there, after a video game type tunnel sequence, it's time for the big old twist. Whoa.
You were right, Jen. He was an easy mark.
Yes, the clues were very much there from how much she knew, but if you hadn't guessed already, Jen is indeed working for the chameleon. And to be fair, I think younger viewers wouldn't necessarily put that reveal together, as opposed to me, who's of course seen hundreds of different versions of this classic betrayal twist beat. And though it's yet another overdone trope, I think they laid out the clues pretty well in a way that they don't give away too much. They also revisit the Aladdin flashbacks from earlier with that angle added in, which is pretty cool. However, from there, it does just become a standard villain walking around monologuing bit, explaining she's turned to sorcery after being rejected from Kung Fu. Okay, doesn't quite cut as deep as some of the other Kung Fu Panda villains, but alas, she's impersonating them instead. If you can't do, teach. If you can't do good enough character, impression them instead.
And now that I have access to the spirit realm,
you're gonna steal Tai Lung's Kung Fu.
Yeah, so her plot is to steal the Kung Fu abilities stored away in the spirit realm. However, just the concept itself of a chameleon being able to transform into anything is a pretty great addition to the universe. It's definitely the most creative concept for a villain, even if the actual character itself is a little bit shallow. Really an ironic twist there. And I'd say, except for the initial info dump cutting some storytelling potential, they do, on the whole, use the full potential of having having a villain with those abilities. What I also like from this scene is presenting a whole fight sequence just through the shadows, and it really goes to show just how there were some truly creative people on the team for this movie. I may be overwhelmed by the overall product, but that doesn't mean you can't appreciate the thumbs up going on the in-betweens. Anyway, it all ends with Chameleon knocking Po off of a bridge and giving Zhen a pep talk, presumably from a self-help book written by Andrew Tate or something.
No one is interested in your feelings.
And of course, Po survives the fall and a fight with a lizard because his two dads just happened to find him in the nick of time. They went under the bridge for some reason. Where did they come from? How did they find him hanging off of a cliff?
Where did you come from, Cotton Eye Joe?
Don't worry about it. It's just a very long setup Deus Ex Machina. What's important is they get to be the vessel for Poe's obligatory "I was wrong, I trusted the wrong person, I'm a failure" scene. We're hitting all of the kids' movie bingo points today.
I was just so determined to keep things the way they were.
You gotta have the main character doubtfully listing all the things they've done wrong. It's just the law. What next? The dads are gonna talk about change being scary?
Everyone is afraid of change, Paul.
Yeah, it's a good message, you know, just very formulaically laid out. Meanwhile, Zhen's having her character crisis too.
Is that why you took me in? So I could help you get what you wanted?
Followed by a new one for me, the villain outright just saying the character growth she doesn't want to happen, but inevitably will.
So for both of our sakes, don't change.
And you'll never guess what ends up happening. In general, some interesting dialogue choices are made here, very much of the cartoon villain vein.
All of its secrets will be mine!
We're just missing a classic mwahahaha line in there. But after a pretty funny gag of them waiting for the moon to slowly go into place, she opens the spirit world with yet more stunning animation. It's definitely the best animated of the franchise for sure. Technology will allow that. And the return of Tai Lung also brings some suitably strong fights as well. You know, that's what you gotta deliver when Kung Fu is literally in the title. Though they do try to shove as much information as they can into some of this dialogue, man.
The Fu Panda? Po might be an idiot, but he'd never willingly hand over Oogway's staff to the likes of you.
Yeah, it just rolls off the tongue, that one. Although, speaking of which, having Chameleon remove the spirit's abilities with her tongue is another very visually creative touch. As Chameleon gets into her talent-sucking sesh, Po heads in with another bit of foreshadowing.
As long as I'm still the Dragon Warrior, I won't let anyone else get hurt because of me.
It's all good, buddy. You've got old Zhen to redeem herself and take that over at the end of the movie.
Please, I made a mistake.
What did I say? There she is. Go on, have a little bit of a back and forth about her betraying you before making amends ahead of the climax. What do you say?
You're not the only one who's made some bad choices lately.
There you go. The hug was pretty cute though. And of course, just as Poe's heading in, the dads run in just a second too late. The finale is about to go down, and that can only mean one thing. A speech to a doubtful room of characters that initially has them laughing at the speaker before ultimately getting on board to save the day. The turning point of which will be signified by the look, followed by a short pause.
Look, I know you think it might be too late to change our ways.
Perfect, by the numbers, poetry. It rhymes, as they keep ripping off something that's been done in the past. Following that unconvincing speech, everyone's nonetheless convinced and the final battle is set. Already, we showed up, saw the character, kicked away, made friends with their sidekick, into the final battle. It's just spend the whole movie, get there, flip, get there again. What a layout. Back in the sucking lair now, it's an opportunity to see them briefly give Tai Lung more screen time beyond being energy sucked.
All I see is a broken promise.
Even in these brief moments, he has more gravitas and emotional punch than the actual villain of this movie. And you know what, as well, this is probably the real largest missed opportunity. To bring back the villain of the first movie is such a cheap trick to get people to see your fourth one, right? And especially with it being such an open secret revealed in the trailers, it's clear that this guy's very short amount of screen time was key in the marketing to get people to watch this movie. So to have him show up, insult the villain, and then get even more taken down doesn't really do him justice. At a time when we're looking about the role of the Dragon Warrior and finding a mentor role and a successor, the biggest missed opportunity is not connecting Tai Lung to the bigger mentor theme. It is already emblematic of their character from the first movie, wanting to have the Dragon Warrior role, and being able to create a redemption arc for an old villain, turning them into a hero by the fourth movie, would have been the perfect resolution that ties all four movies into a good little ending. You don't need a new new Zootropolis ripoff Fox character showing up and giving them the role because they're new. The best opportunity would have been if Tai Lung was brought in and had to redeem themselves and be awarded the Dragon Warrior role they always wanted under a new establishing with their spirit healed in some form. It would have been satisfying for fans of the original movie, which is everyone who watches the franchise, and could have come with it so much more thematic messaging depth. But instead, it's just a cheap little jingly keys to get you to watch the movie and ultimately be disappointed by this very Kung Fu Panda movie. There are so many tenements of this franchise that are completely eviscerated in some form, and I think this was one of the worst ones because they clearly had a chance to take this in a really interesting, emotionally deep direction, and they didn't. I don't even know if it crossed their minds. From here, we have a classic bit of third act back and forth between Po going in alone and the gang outside infiltrating the building. It's kind of like Shrek 2, just without the best song number ever and a giant gingerbread man. Lots more nipple-biting bunny children, though. Why is that a thing? Also, I'm glad Poe's also getting tired of the overtrodden tropes going on here.
If only I had a dumpling for every time a villain told me how much we had in common.
Being self-aware ain't exactly an excuse, but I can appreciate it nonetheless. It's an easy gag to make for the writers that are kind of flubbing this. Of course, he tries to talk her down with the change is good message this movie's peddling.
Well, I saw that coming.
Doesn't work, and the Gusto Shifu brothers pop up to validate the return of his violent behaviors.
Kick her butt.
I'm way ahead of you.
They really sidelined this guy in this movie. Not as much as the Furious 5, but still. The final fight itself, I gotta say, it's action, right? It's well executed and gives an inventive fight that we genuinely haven't seen in other movies. Until her final boss form anyway, which echoes hundreds of movies dating back to Sleeping Beauty. Big old dragon thing takes the fight to the rooftop, we know the drill. That's not her final boss form though. No, it's the bit that the trailers ruined.
Stand back. I'm gonna kick my butt.
Wow. The actual Po on Pope fight itself is again really entertainingly put together. Just look at that shot of the two Po faces having a little split shot together. Like, that's really cool. Just maybe the literal final fight of the movie would have been better not spoiled in the trailer. I don't know, just me. The marketing of this movie just shows how shallow of a cash grab it really was. Anyway, Po then goes full Cars 3 and tags Zhen into the race. Still no car crash though. I'm waiting for it.
Get out of there!
You have to do this!
Hands over the staff and everything, I told you. However, with Zhen's fight with Chameleon being both personality loaded and satisfying in its own right, at least Po then gets to do the final dispatch. And there is something of a touching element as all of the masters show Po respect.
I think it's time you send us home, Panda.
And then yes, we get the successor scene we all know was coming since that plot point was introduced.
You can't have your mooncake and eat it too.
And then the Furious 5 finally appear. As soon as the credits start to roll, huh? And in a completely silent capacity, so they didn't have to pay the actors. We'd love to see it. And that is the end of DreamWorks' terrible Kung Fu Panda 4. I've certainly seen worse by the number sequels, but this does just leave everyone pretty underwhelmed. It has its moments and it's exceptionally well animated, and there's some solid creative action as well, but overall, it really doesn't reinvent the wheel. In fact, it's one big salad of story tropes we've seen before, and don't even get me started on them stringing together the subplot for the dads to be relevant. It's quite impressive in a movie where you removed 5 of the franchise's principal characters whilst also sidelining Shifu that you still managed to give the remaining characters a useless subplot. Add in the fact you've missed some great opportunities with the successor that you've actually introduced and lost so much opportunity in the sub-tiny reappearing main villain of the first movie that just gets chucked in to sell tickets. Gah, this really is just a caricature of itself and a case study of how to make something so shallow out of source material that had so much more. Add something safe with a decent message to chuck in for the kids, you could do a lot worse, but there's also a whole lot better. And I don't think this one will be as revisited as time goes on. Hopefully though, there's no Kung Fu Panda 5. For now though, my name's been Daz. Thank you very much for reaching the end of this terrible episode. Do tell me your thoughts on Kung Fu Panda 4. I'd love to hear all your thoughts and more, and I shall see you all in a little bit. Cheerio!